Well, a very good afternoon and welcome along to this afternoon's Light Bite lunch. It is Thursday. We are back in Ballinamore after a trip to Scarborough last week, and it's lovely to be back here in studio. And it's a bright sunny afternoon in Leitrim here. Thankfully, we haven't had the snow they promised us just yet. Before we begin the show today, I do want to make viewers aware that we are going to be touching on some very sensitive issues, and viewer discretion is advised. We are delighted to have an absolutely wonderful guest. Joining us is Brendan Murphy. Has been a businessman for a long, long time. I've known Brendan more years than either of us would be willing to admit to. And Brendan actually had moved his business to Ukraine. And he's joining us today to tell us his story about his journey back from Ukraine after the difficulties started. So the first thing I'll do, Brendan, if you can just tell us a little bit about your own business background.
Okay, so I'm an international business consultant. And what that means is that I work with clients to help their business be more profitable, better organized, better led, using structures and procedures that essentially make it easier for them to run their company.
So that's it, really, in a nutshell. That's absolutely ideal. That I think we were discussing it there before we came on air, and I believe it was a talk you were giving on perfecting the customer journey. I think is how yourself and myself first actually met, and really, really insightful talk. So,
Yeah.
in terms of business, what was it brought you to Ukraine to begin with?
So I've known Ukraine for over 20 years. It's a very large, very diverse country. And I started off with IBM and Microsoft in Ireland when they were building their IT foundation. And of course, now you have this massive IT center that is Ireland. At that stage, Ireland was not anywhere near proficient. And they wanted to bring Ukrainians who are IT proficient into Ireland. And the company doing that was having problems. Essentially, their processes were the wrong way around, so that Microsoft and IBM were not getting the skills they needed at the time they needed. There were delays. And I was asked to go and help them to remove the delays, change the process so that when they wanted to bring people into the country, it was a matter of weeks rather than 6 to 7 months, which was the problem at the time.
Right, so that's go ahead, Jeff.
So from that, I got to know the country. I got to know the people. I employed people in Dublin myself, employed people in Ireland myself, and I understood the power of business. And the Ukrainians and Irish people have a very common personality in the sense that we are entrepreneurs first. We're business people. Even if you're employed by somebody else, you like to look at the way things work to try and make it better. You want to be successful. You're very ambitious, but not to the detriment of other people. You want everybody to succeed. And very often, you look at people in Ireland and Ukraine and you say, this entrepreneurial characteristic is exactly the same. That brought me there. I was developing business and trade between Ireland and Ukraine. It was small because we were in different places in the world. Ireland in the 1990s, as everybody will know, was one of the poorest in the world, poorest in Europe. Ukraine had got stuck in its transition and reform, but you could see both of them were trying to get to a certain place. Ireland has got to that place, and Ukraine is traveling very quickly to that place.
Right. So there is actually quite a similarity there. I wasn't aware just how close those similarities were.
Sure.
In that sense, then, with the number of Ukrainians coming to Ireland, can you see a lot of them eventually going into self-employment, do you think? Or is there going to be
Even
too many obstacles?
even now, okay, people are landing and saying, okay, where can I find work? Where can I use my skills? So, the IT people, they already have good relationships with people in Ireland, so that's very quick. But builders and plumbers and people who run shops, run legal firms. They're all interested in creating something here. They understand that they need to learn the Irish way. So a lot of them are saying, I want a job first, and then when I know how it works, how the system works, how to do things the correct way, I'll set up my own business. But that's really started before they're landed in Dublin or in Rosslare or anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that certainly they will receive an Irish welcome, and I know from the amount of people who are already laying out offers to them that certainly they're going to have a bright future here.
Yeah, and traditionally, Ukrainians across Europe and America have been very high contributors to society. Right? That's been the case for the last 70 years, and that's going to happen to an Ireland at a time when, we have demands that we can't meet in terms of skills and people, but also in terms of age profile. And one of the things will be that they will be contributors to the tax system and to the pension system, because their intention is to work and create wealth. And that's a very strong instinct in Ukrainians.
Yeah, right. Well, as I said, it's certainly one that we're going to be watching with interest, and obviously any supports that either myself personally through the accountancy, that we at the Light Bite Lunch to help promote anything we can do in that regard, by all means. Anyone that you personally know or through your network that you know, by all means have them get in touch with us, and we'd be more than happy to assist in any way at all that we possibly can. And I know the same goes for a lot of our regular viewers who'll be in contact with me afterwards saying, how can I help? So again, anything we can do, by all means, do put the word out through your own network.
Yes, and I'll send you some links to channels that people will be able to do that as well.
That's absolutely brilliant. So, for you yourself, we are a little bit later on going to discuss your journey back from Ukraine with your family.
Hmm.
Um, your daily posting on LinkedIn has made remarkable reading. So I have to
Thank
ask the
you.
question: are we going to see a book from this? And well, first of all, do you feel that people want to read an in-depth look at what the actual escape journey and life after the invasion was?
This, people tell me that, people I know, people who read my posts on LinkedIn reach out to me with private messages, say, tell us more of the story. It's not all terrible, by the way. It's not. It's not. It's an interesting story because for several reasons. One is that strangers would help. Safe houses were organized. Security was organized. Moving from across country, ancient roads that the Romans built that were cobbled, that had not been driven on by a car for however many. Some of them probably haven't seen anything other than a tractor, going over fields simply to avoid, because my job was not to see the trouble. No, was not to see the war, not to see tanks and bombs. My job was to stay as far away, although we did, right. But my job was to stay as much away from that as possible, and
Yeah,
it
no,
makes for an interesting story.
right, absolutely. Well, I mean, I know certainly if anyone knows any publisher out there who wants a story really well told, again, Brendan will tell us all how to get in touch with him towards the end of the show. And please do pass his details on, because it really is a remarkable story. And again, if you want to see any of the posts, you can either look them up on LinkedIn under Brendan Murphy, or again, drop us an email and we'll be happy to put you in touch with Brendan to see the tales he has to tell. And as he said, a lot of it is very, very positive. I have to admit, one I thought was particularly positive was the 3-year-old and their first words in English.
Yes, that was nice. I love you. Yes, it was good, and it was unscripted. It wasn't something that someone had said to Olivia. So the audience will know. I drove a very small Skoda Fabia 1.2 with 5 people, a cat and a dog, 4,195 kilometers. The oldest was 80, and Olivia is three. So Olivia's first English words were "I love you," and it was simply in a room in a safe house, unscripted and just voluntary. So that was nice.
Yeah, that I thought, as I said, when I read that, it was kind of, that shows that the other side of it, that there is real life, that there is, and that there are celebrations to be had, while there
Yes.
has been this mass loss of life, etc. Right, and there are celebrations to be had. So, going back to the business side of things, where are you at this stage? Have you managed to get yourself set up again in Ireland? Are you looking for work? Are you open to offers of work?
So first of all, I'm at zero. Well, I'm actually in negative territory. You know, when somebody bombs your house and your business has disappeared, it's not a good outcome. So I'm at zero. I don't have work. I was building a portfolio of work, so I have to start again. I'm looking for work. Um, and you know, I'm interested in all offers, really, not because I'm not being careful, but because I want to work. I want to be involved in business. I want to be successful. I want to contribute to that, whether that's in a management role, whatever the role is available. I'm interested.
Right. Well, again, we'll certainly put that out through our network, and hopefully, we'll find something for you, even in the short term, to help you get started back on your road.
Sure, that'd be great.
Now, as you know, every guest that comes on this show are asked the same question. And I know when we spoke to you previously, and we were hoping to have you on the show during your time of evacuating, when unfortunately, well, fortunately, you reached the safe area where communication just wasn't going to be possible. We like to ask every guest, what is your favourite light bite lunch? And you mentioned to me that while making that journey, there was something stood out for you that you couldn't wait to get back to Ireland for.
Yeah, so if you imagine it's dark, right? There's no lights on. You're driving through fields, over ditches, over very old broken roads and big holes in them. And I thought about this and I thought, you know, I would really like a bacon sandwich. And I think for the last 2,000 something kilometers, I just wanted the classical, simple Irish bacon sandwich. And it was you could smell it, you could taste it, but you couldn't have it because you were sat with your car, literally holding the steering wheel, just bouncing, bouncing, bouncing all along, um, trying to avoid the wrong turn that will get you in front of, you know, tanks that were coming out of Russian planes, paratroopers that were coming out of planes. If you turned in the wrong direction, you were going to drive into them, and that wasn't a good thing. So that was the whole thing in my mind every single step of the way after that point in going through those fields. So it would very definitely be a bacon sandwich.
Bacon sandwich. And did you finally manage to get your bacon sandwich when you got
I
back?
did indeed, and it was the most tasty thing ever. It really,
Good.
really was. You because you just it's strange, but it was more tasty than you can ever imagine. And so yes, it was great.
Good. Well, I'm delighted that you managed to get that. Right. Once again, folks, I am going to warn you, we're about to get into a very detailed discussion about Brendan's experience on his journey back. Some people may find this difficult to listen to, and we do offer, obviously advise viewer discretion. Brendan has very kindly shared some images with us from his journey back, and we are going to share those now on the screen. And Brendan can tell us then the story behind those as we go along. So we'll start, I think, Brendan, with this one.
Yes. So this one, the Russians came over the border. We were the first to be hit on the 24th of February at 5:30 with cruise missiles. And we were the nearest one to us was 2 kilometers away, which is not very far when it's a missile. Um, and they were big missiles. They destroyed a bridge completely. And this is a column of Russian soldiers with Chechens as well. And as you can see, the trucks were destroyed by the Ukrainian military. And there's a lot of this. You know, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs across Ukraine of this type of military vehicle in this condition, caused by the Ukrainian army and the military. So that's what it is. You wouldn't imagine that that's a road, but it is. They were parked under trees at the side of the road, and as you can say, obviously everybody connected to that group of vehicles is dead.
Right. Well, and again, I mean, I want to make it clear to people that these are first-hand photos. These are not professionally taken media pictures or anything like that. These are actual first-hand accounts that we're receiving here. So moving on, this was, I presume, a supermarket.
So this is in Irpin, the town where I lived in. This is an apteca, which is a pharmacy.
Pharmacy.
And they deliberately attacked all anything, food, pharmacy, anything like that. They deliberately attacked them in order to make it extremely difficult for people. And this was this is a typical pharmacy in European modern, all of the kind of medicines you expect here, and they just basically put a tank, I think it was, that just went through that.
Absolutely unbelievable. So this is a little bit more of a good news type story.
Yeah. So one of the things, this is one of the things the farmers did with their Massey Ferguson tractors and with the John Deere tractors and with this tractor here, is that they would steal Russian military equipment. And they're rockets. Okay, you can probably see that at the back end of these grey tubes, it's the pointy end. But they basically, that's a set that goes into a missile firing system. And this farmer stole them because the Russians and the Chechens and the Belarusians who would come along would get lost because they didn't have good GPS. And they would leave their trucks and they would leave their tanks and they would leave their other vehicles. And actually now the Ukrainian army have more tanks than they started with, simply because the farmers stole them. And they stole fuel trucks. You can imagine, they just simply...
Well, now, I think we should clarify, when we say they stole them, they took possession of.
That's correct, actually, because there is a legal ruling that since these are illegally in Ukraine, you can't steal them. So you just basically... these are dangerous items that are delivered to the proper authorities, who return them to the Russians through in an aggressive way. So basically, these would have been loaded up to a Ukrainian weapon system and
returned one at a time.
Yeah, and the tanks are being used to destroy Russian tanks as well. So they are returned, but in an aggressive manner.
Yes. Right. So the next picture we have.
Yeah, Yevgeny. So this really is a future of all of us, really. He was killed in cold blood, and the people who buried him had to do it. This is a pin as well. Had to do it under threat of being killed by the Russians. The Russians did kill people burying people, and they killed women, they killed children, they've killed, there's nobody they didn't kill. And I just thought it was a profound picture because the railway track to the left indicates the kind of future. And you can see it's not very bright. And for me, it was a metaphor for Europe, if not the world, that unless we stop this type of, war and this murderous evil, we have no future. And, this sign that was written in pen, you can imagine trying to do that when people wanting to shoot you and kill you, and then put that now, because Irpin has been liberated from the Russians, these bodies will be dug up and properly buried. But some people were buried at the side of roads, some people were buried at the side of the forest, some people, there are bodies in houses and garages and you name it, and they're being picked up now. But this one here a couple of weeks ago now. Yevgeny was killed, and his neighbours managed to put him into some sort of ground, just like as you can see.
Yeah, it's certainly. And we'll move on then to this.
So that's the city of Irpin. Irpin, Gostomel, and Bucha were very heavily attacked. They were first to be attacked because the Antonov, the very famous plane manufacturer, has an airport there, and the Russians and the Chechens came on the first day with their missiles and their their helicopter troop carriers and gunships and planes and bombs. And this is a bomb that they bombed the city. Well, it's a town really, and you can see the town in the forefront, and then the big plume of smoke. Just behind that, actually, is Chernobyl, which everybody will know what that is, and probably most people are becoming aware now that the radiation is increasing because the Russians have set fire to 10,000 hectares of forest deliberately. And actually, the Russian soldiers now are being taken back to Belarus with serious radiation sickness. But that radiation has gone into the atmosphere and gone into Europe now. And in time, people are going to have radiation problems in Europe because the world decided not to intervene, unfortunately.
Right, and moving on then.
Yeah, this is Irpin. This is taken yesterday, because it was only 48 hours ago that the last Russians were killed and the city was declared. So what they're doing now, nobody's allowed to go back because basically territorial defense under the mayor, Alexander Makrushin, is going. And what they're trying to do is to, first of all, there's a lot of booby traps, there's a lot of bombs, a lot of mines, plastic mines that look like toys for children, put in play areas, put in, where kindergarten schools, they put them to kill people and to kill children, and little trip wires between gates and that. So that all has to be done. But what they're doing at the moment is that they've filmed and photographed different places. This came from an Irish guy whose sister lives here. He sent me this late yesterday. And it just shows you what they did. There's no possibility that was anything other than a residential premises, and there was no military connection to it. But that's what they wanted to do, and that's what they've done.
It really is horrific when we look at it.
Yeah, and that again is the streets in Irpin, and again you can see the two Ukrainian territorial defense guys. It's not very clear, but you get what you get. And you can see that the vehicles are burnt out, and the apartment, you can see there's a ladder where there was a fire, and the fire brigade and territorial defense were being shot at as they were trying to put out these fires by Russians, by snipers. They were trying to kill. Basically, they were creating a circumstance where emergency services had to go because of gas, because the danger of bigger explosion, and then they were trying to kill them.
It really is. I mean, I think the pictures tell a huge amount of the story.
Yeah, they do.
Of what people are feeling left behind. And an interesting discussion that I've heard recently being discussed is talk about people wanting to return.
Yes.
And I heard one of the humanitarian agencies at the border, people don't want to move too far from the border because they're of the belief that in a very short amount of time they can go back home. But is there anything for them to actually go back home to?
Rebuilding. Okay, so, and this is very hard. And if there's any Ukrainians listening, first of all, I apologize for what I'm going to say now, because it's the truth and it's not a nice one. What was there, the community, my neighbors, the houses that were around mine, the school, the business, the shop, they're not there. Okay. And some of it can't be put back. People can't, they can't. It just can't. And so when you're talking about returning to Ukraine, it's to build a new Ukraine with people who may be familiar to you, but not everybody. It will be with other people as well, because unfortunately the casualties are extensive, and that's difficult. When somebody lived for maybe 40 or 50 years in the same apartment, was elderly, and terrible things happened to them, that person's not there anymore. So you won't see them sitting in the sun talking to their friends who were also in their 80s. And it was very popular, and it will be always popular in Ukraine to sit in the sunshine and people to chat and to talk, tell their stories and to laugh and joke. And that's not there. And because people were buried in the playground and buried in the kindergarten, buried in the school, buried in the car park, there will be a time when it's sensitive, because children can't play where someone was buried. It's immensely difficult subject, because it's not going to be the way it was. The teachers are not going to be the same way. The children are not going to be the same way. Even if you physically take all of one of the things of the previous photographs is you can't hear the flapping of the curtains and the crunch of the glass and the broken debris on the floor. There's no bird song. There's no the noises you hear are dogs and cats crying for food because they've been left by their owners who were trying to escape. So all of that is the here and now. People need to go back. People need to build their lives, but it won't be. Let me say it a different way: not back, but go forward. We need to go forward in Ukraine, and physically, yes, you are in the country, you're in the town, but for example, where I live, some of the buildings will have to be replaced. They won't be able to be, you can't just rebuild the walls and say it's okay. So it will look different, feel different, and it will be sensitive. And the shock of discovery is not there yet, because people are not seeing it. And I know I'm laboring the point. That's because it's sensitive.
Yeah, no, wait, I really do appreciate it, and that's why, as I said, I wanted you to have plenty of time to tell the story your way,
Mm.
and based on the experiences you've had coming from there. Um, it's, as I said, it really is so hard to imagine what life is like to be in the position that so many Ukrainians have found themselves in.
Mm.
Um, is it unreasonable to compare it to what it has been like for people coming out of COVID, where despite the fact that there's supposedly a return to some sort of normality, it's actually a totally new type of normality. There's new.
Yeah, there is, yeah. Part of it is, Rory. Part of it is very, very different, obviously, because
Yes.
I mean, I've chosen not to share videos and photographs because I recognize the coat, I recognize the jumper, I recognize, the shape of people. I know who that is. That was their favorite jumper, their favorite coat. But there is that sense of displacement, which will be the same, because people in Ireland are displaced in the sense of their routine and their familiarity with things, online shopping, not meeting people, not being able to do the usual things, the government always being on the television telling you, okay, it's at this level, it's negative, it's negative, it's negative. That is an aspect that's shared. But the sense of grief and bereavement is very different.
Yes. Um, and well, that is something like that. I don't think there's any way to come to terms with the levels of grief the number of people. I mean, if we move on and talk about the ethnic cleansing,
Hmm.
the mass displacement that has been occurring.
Yeah, so Mariupol, everybody will know, and they know that the Russians have flattened it, and they've killed a lot of people there. And Putin is demanding its surrender, and the Mariupol people are saying, "No, we're not, we're not giving in. We're not going." But what they've done is they've forcibly removed about 490,000 Ukrainians, putting them on trains, which is what Stalin did, and sent them to Central and Eastern Russia and Sakhalin Island. People might know what Sakhalin Island is. It's a cold, miserable place. It's an island that is between Japan and Russia in very cold waters. And they're sent to very remote parts of kind of mainland Russia. And it's not different to sending somebody from Ireland to the other side of Canada. Or, it's literally stripping them, and they're taking their documents, they're taking their phone, they're taking their identity, and nobody knows what's happening to them. By the way, they're disappeared in that sense, and unfortunately, because we know that of the rape and the murder and the torture that's happening in Ukraine, it'll be no different to these innocent people who are being forcibly removed. And that's ethnic cleansing, because they're busing in Russians, which is what they did in Crimea, and they're trying to do it here, to have a false referendum to declare the territory Russian, and then it legitimizes it for the Russian people, and that's what they want to do. So that's really a hard experience for almost 500,000 people.
And, like, in your mind, where do you see, or how do you see an ending in sight for this?
Well, I'm asked that quite a lot. And the reality is the lessons and the parallels come from World War II. It doesn't come from anywhere else. And the reality is Russia will be broken by this. Russia should not survive this, not because people are angry about Russia or people feel an animosity to the Russian people, although they should, because 86% of the population support Putin now, and it's gone up from 71%. And prior to that, it was 60 something percent. So, I mean, more and more Russians approve of what he's done. So they do deserve that disdain. And on a personal level, they do have to shoulder a burden of proof to show that they are not like Putin on a personal level. But, like Germany couldn't have been allowed to become what it was prior to World War II, because it was too dangerous. So there are very considerable difficulties. And even yesterday, a very, very powerful legal person in Ireland asked me, what's the bargain? What can we offer? What negotiation can happen? And what I've tried to do is say, well, what negotiation would you have with a paedophile? Would you let them stay in the classroom? No. Would you let them be near children? No. What would you do with someone so evil that would, attack a child? Absolutely, you would do nothing with them. Well, then surely that applies to Russia. You can't. There's no offer that you can possibly give that would be acceptable to anyone, because it's just an obscenity and it's an evil. And what has to happen is that the global community, if it really wants to have peace, and people do want to be able to, exploit their skills and make money and build their life and be happy and free and do the gig economy and the digital stuff and all of that, so go on holidays, they can't allow this evil. And therefore it needs to be shuttered. It needs to be closed. And any business that continues in Russia needs to be rejected by the global community. The world, the community of peoples around the world say, well, okay, then if you're still going to sell your product to Russia, I'm not buying it. I'm just not buying it, right? Just end of story. We're not buying their oil and gas. There's plenty of oil and gas in the world. It's just the fact that previous relationships, which included Russia, prevented exploration licenses being released in other countries where there's plenty of gas. So it's about hard reality that if you do not want this to happen, you can't allow Russia to remain as a member of the world community. And you can't allow Russian people to be openly embraced because they are supportive of this, and on a personal level they have to shoulder a burden of responsibility to show that they as an individual don't support it.
Okay, but I mean, we've heard a lot of reports that within Russia, the spin that is being put on this is very different to what we're seeing around the world.
I get message from Russians. I get message I get text messages, I get WhatsApp messages, I get LinkedIn messages. Yes. But they want this war. They want this imperial, powerful, might is right, killing people is part of the way of life. They believe that there were threats to them that would justify the killing of women and children and the rape of people and the stealing of material possessions and the destruction of towns and cities. They believe that that's reasonable. And in the world that we've lived in and grown up in, we were told that the World Security Mechanism, which was the United Nations and organizations like NATO and the EU, that we as a group of countries didn't agree that that could possibly happen, that no one would ever think of doing that. And it's akin to saying, well, maybe they had some chemical weapons. And it's a bit like using the kind of pedophile thing. Maybe the child was too attractive. Maybe they shouldn't wear the school uniform the way they did. It's an obscenity to say, well, we can go and kill a lot of people. And the world has to reject that and say, absolutely not. We're not going to help you. We're not going to have anything to do with you. We are breaking relationships completely, because they won't stop otherwise.
Right, but while Russia have a veto on the UN Council, that's something that physically cannot happen.
Well, that's one of the things that people have challenged me on that, because I've said, in reality, the United Nations is finished, okay, as currently constituted. The European Union is finished as currently constituted because you have Germany, France, Hungary, and Austria who have alienated everybody else, right? And everybody understands there's a problem with it. It doesn't mean you're going to completely rip them up and start with nothing, but in terms of the current structures, it's done. You can't have the president of the United Nations Security Council bombing cities, flattening cities, killing many, many thousands, targeting children, raping. You can't have the president of the United Nations, which Russia currently is, right? They're the president of the Security Council. That you can't have someone who is doing that and be on the Security Council even. You just can't. Because otherwise, then what is it? Right? It's just a group of people who take your tax money, my tax money, and everybody else's tax money, live well, and go murdering people.
Yeah. Now, I've had an email in here from a gentleman called John who wants to know your views in relation to the expulsion of the four Russian diplomats. Does it go far enough? Is there a lot more to the story we need to be told about?
Yeah, so I'll say three things to John. First of all, they're not diplomats. Right, that is bogus. These people are not here to build relations between Russia and Ireland. They're here for intelligence and for insurgency and to encourage people disaffected to cause trouble in Ireland. Right, that's what their priority. The second thing is, I don't believe Ireland should have relations with Russia currently. Okay, now that doesn't mean that you can't talk to them, but you don't need an embassy. What do you need an embassy for when they're doing these atrocities? No, you don't. You should close it because they are the advocates of what is happening in Ukraine and they deny and lie consistently. The third thing I'd say is that Ireland has been very innocent. Okay, we've lived in a bubble, right? And we've said, oh, the world is approximately okay. And we've done extremely well in this world. And now we need to stand back and say, the world isn't what we thought it was. And we need to be independently strong and independently intelligent about building relationships with people. Because Putin's been around for a very long time. This sickness in Russia has been around a very, very long time. And in 2014, the embassy should have been limited to 3 or 4 people. But as people will know, they want to build this massive underground complex in Dublin underneath the embassy. And it's not for cultural development. It's not for developing the relations between Russia and Ukraine. It's Russia and Ireland. It's for creating tension and discontent and division in Europe and in Ireland. So it's not enough, no. I will probably leave 3 a minute and then the rest of them can go back.
Right. I mean, the only concern I would say if we decide, okay, we're shutting down the Russian embassy here, immediately we know that as a tit for tat, the Irish embassy in Russia will be shut down, which means anyone currently in Russia of Irish citizenship who's there for work. And again, it may not even be a case they're working for an Irish company, it's whereby they are working over there, are suddenly isolated.
Well, with respect, I know some of the Irish guys in Russia, okay? They can get on a plane any given day, right? This is week 5, week 6 of this war. Prior to that, there were months and months and months of them to build up to this war, right? They are free to leave, okay? Now, you might suppose, well, okay, then we need an embassy for consular assistance. Do you honestly think the Russians are going to listen to the Irish if they arrest an Irish person? No, they're not.
No.
If they kill an Irish person, do you think they're going to say, sorry, lads, we didn't mean to kill the Irish person, we meant to kill the American because we don't like them? You know, Ireland has no influence in Russia, nor should it have, because you're actually, the country of Ireland's moral compass is being abused and sullied by a relationship with Russia, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? And anyone who is there, if they are still there, well, to be honest, I think that that is something where they need to revisit their own judgment and say, should I, as an Irish person, be here, given the circumstances? Given that they do arrest foreign people, they do put them in jail, they do treat them as hostages. They've done it for many, many different countries, many different people from different nationalities. So it would be a bit like going to, say, an extremist country in the 70s, like going to Iran. Or if you went to North Korea, you're not looking for trouble.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that you just have to accept that Russia is troubled at this time, and it's not a good idea to be there.
Right. And what's your views on the claims from some Russian negotiators that they were actually being poisoned?
So, put it this way, the Ukrainian panel negotiators, if we can call them that, and Abramovich were poisoned. Okay, so why was Abramovich poisoned and the Ukrainians poisoned, but the Russian negotiator on the other side wasn't poisoned? Certainly the Ukrainians didn't poison themselves, right?
Yeah.
Why would they? They're there to try and get a ceasefire. They're not going to poison themselves because they want this to stop. So if Abramovich was poisoned, either it was because he was sitting down and having refreshments with them that was poisoned and he just by accident got sick, or somebody in Russia doesn't want this negotiation to occur.
Yes.
You know, not because, you know, if I was attacking you and you said, Brendan, can we sit down? You're not going to poison yourself because that makes you less capable of finding a way out.
No, absolutely, and that's totally understandable. It's just like some of the reports I've been reading on it where they're talking about it was environmental, it was this, it was that. It for any reason, anyone with a reasonable level of sanity would have great difficulty accepting it. Am I saying it didn't happen? No, I wasn't there, so I'm not in a position to say it did or it didn't. I just, is it credible? Questionable.
Yes, of course, because if you think of it, they're in the most secure building in Istanbul, right? Nobody, the president of Turkey, would not want anything terrible happening to anyone because it's on his reputation. So he'll make it very secure by his own instruction and orders. All of the chefs who are making food and providing refreshments are all screened. All of the food is tested, right? So it's not like, I mean, it's about as likely as the Queen getting food poisoning, or in England, or the Taoiseach getting food poisoning in Dáil Éireann. That's just not really likely, is it?
Yeah, no, absolutely understand that, and it's a most bizarre world, and hopefully it is very soon going to come to a conclusion that is good for all parties. I mean, there isn't as such, I think, a conclusion that will work for everyone, but something that is going to in some way return life to whatever the new normal is going to be.
And that's a difficult one.
Right? That well, it is. And I mean, I can't see where there is even the remotest piece of common ground.
No, they're actually putting mines in agricultural fields because they know that that food will go to Europe. So
Yeah,
the Russians are doing that to prevent the farmers of Ukraine from planting. They're stopping, I think it is 90 vessels that are loaded with food product from Ukraine from exiting the Black Sea. And now they have to ship. They're now trying to find a route through Romania to try and find a land bridge to the Romanian port to try and get the food out that way. They're deliberately, as a matter of policy and activity, trying to strangle the food export of Ukraine, not to cost Ukraine any pain, because Ukraine has been given so much money from the international community, they don't need it in terms of a balance of payments, but to deny Europe food in the way that they're denying Europe oil and gas and other things.
well, I think we still have a few minutes left, but I think we're going to call a halt there because it's been quite an in-depth discussion, and people will want a little bit of time to absorb everything we've discussed. Brendan, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to contact you?
So they can connect with me on LinkedIn, no problem. They can email me at brightbusiness@irelandmail.com. Or those are the two best ways to connect with me, to be honest.
Perfect. Right. And what I will do is I'll put links up on the page after the show
Sure.
for both your LinkedIn page, and I'll put that email address up as well if anyone wants to contact you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Brendan, wishing yourself and your family every happiness as you resettle into your Irish home.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. We will be back in 2 weeks' time with another panel of guests and a general discussion. And we do hope that you'll be able to join us then. And good afternoon.